Hi everyone, this is me again. I just wanted to clarify a little, a couple of things about the literature review. Uh, I know this is a little bit more square, format, and wants to show you a couple of, one example how normally we academics do it. Um, it's similar when you're trying to address to a judge in the sense that there's a specific template, a specific formal language that needs to be utilized, um, and um, and very specific formats. And one of the format that was required for this assignment was the American Psychology Association, and they laid out all the tips and the formats and the citations. How are those citations utilized throughout a text, and then facilitate um, every reviewer or every reader, to read through it and understand this standardized format. So I'm gonna just share my screen again, so you guys can have an example. So here we have, an article that kind of gives a perspective onto the National Survey of Probation staff. They're talking about the female youth and juvenile justice settings. And as you can see, there's more than one author for this particular article. So normally when there's a lot of, authors, we kind of condense in one style. You take the first one, which is the correspondent author, and then place it at all. This is a Latin way to say and others, right? And here you can see the abstract. The abstract is a compilation of the information that's going to be explained in 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 the subsequent items or sessions. And as you can see, it's very succinct, but at the same time, a detail and has the purpose of this article. So as you can see, when I click on this, I can see the contribution of those authors, um, the way they're gonna corroborate their hypothesis, and a few findings towards the end of the abstract. And here, just next to it, or it could be right after it, it's the keywords, right? Because when you do a search, the first thing you're gonna do is just to type it in, specific keywords for your research. And as you can see, the first session is introduction. And the introduction, there's no need to place, a title from the articles. You can just go straight forward and give the context, to your reader, to your audience, right? And in this specific article, see how the date, the information is laid out here. So every phrase has an evidence. Because imagine that we are not experts, but we are trying to be, right? But we're still going to rely on some other authors' information, right? Because they did the research, they had initial findings, and you can actually underpin your research in somebody else's. So that's how we do it. And if you look for it, so it gives the context, placing the time, the time frame or the period, and some other citation if they extract this information from other articles or outsource or data, or they outsource the data here. As you can see, Hodge and L, and then comma 2015. So this is actually a very APA style, right? And if you have more authors that had, the same findings or converged towards, the same conclusion, you can actually match them up and say, well, this article from 2015 and this article from Watson and Elderman from 2012, they have, the same information, which is with regards to residential placements, how it has grown, and at the same time the decreasing. And right after, in the next session, they laid out all the numbers. So from 1990 to 1999, the number of female delinquency cases entering detention rose 50% compared with a 5% increase for boys. So this is how, the data is actually manipulated. And if they are not primary data, uh, but a secondary data from other author, you can again cite, this information. So they are basically outsourced, right? At the same time, the author explained, the dynamics from 2004 up to 2013, and how was the dynamics and what type of violations. And what is interesting to see is that in this context, the type of crimes, are laid out here, and also, the percentage of those crimes. So as you can see, and if you go, scrolling down a little bit, this article, you can see the same contextualization going towards, the literature review. And the literature review are a little bit more expanded in the sense that they need to correlate this literature if their hypothesis in order to corroborate their hypothesis or going against it. So both outcomes are completely possible. And again, you can see more information laid out here, and also from other, authors in that respect. They are, you know, being very detailed and uh, at the same time condensed in a format that that the reader can understand what they are saying. And for example, laying out all the elements necessary for this grasp, right? So in that case, if you look for the second, paragraph, they came with these concept of gender responsive and laying out, some information from these authors. In, and you see that every author has the date, has a year, because imagine that this author can have, multiple articles, books, and you need to pinpoint one specific to say, look, I read this, and I need to, and I want to inform about this specific article. Okay, so, and another thing that is important here is you don't see vagueness, you don't see very generic phrases. They always, those authors always come, with evidence, right? So if you go through, again, with this article, you can see that it's very extensive in that sense, and very complete because it's, an academic publication, and very square, and box it up, but you can see, there's all the information that is necessary for a reader to understand, what is being said here. And then afterwards, they rely on the method and then the results, conclusion. Here, if you're dealing with some sampling procedures, for example, a quantitative data set. You need to explain what are your variables, or if it's qualitative, if you placed any type of surveys, and if what was the survey, what are the main questions, how many respondents you had, and so on and so forth, and how you manage, to create the survey and what is important for this survey. And here, a survey as an instrument, they laid out all the definition and also explaining the questionnaire from the survey, right? We're explaining the questions, why those questions were so important, and why do you need, for example, to cross-tab with demographics, locations, and zip codes, and other variables that they can deem, relevant for his or her or they study, right? So on and so forth. And then goes the data analysis that they did, the results. You can see that they laid out, not only information from the US, but also from other states. In that case, they utilize a map, in order to pinpoint their information. And then afterwards, they explain, all the questions, in a very detailed way. So the main important questions. And here is a little bit of a more quant data explaining, what are the characteristics of my sample, how many male, females, or non-binary um, respondents the authors had. And in that case, they are asking for current position and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of tables here laid out, and all those tables you can see they are very detailed, frequency, percentage, cumulative, and with some notes, some methodological notes. And you see there's a couple of information here laid out, and there for every information they laid out, there's a context beforehand and also a conclusion right afterwards, right? So here's I'm not gonna go over question by question, but this is just for you guys to see what it looks like, to have a qualitative approach for one specific topic. And here they decided to lay out some information, which is possibly an an open-ended response from their survey, and just going a little bit further, the discussion, which basically means the results they manage to achieve and the outcomes. And then right after, these discussions, a couple of limitations they had throughout their research, further, research that is possible to do with this type of data. We call it normally future research, and then final conclusion. Right, so this is just one type of information here, and the references they pull it out, for creating this article. And what I could see is that when you're talking about academic research or research methods, they're kind of inflexible in that sense. So that's why we need to follow, strictly those information, because they're standardized and throughout, us scientists overall. But when you're talking about, for example, how to gather, the information, if you're dealing, for example, with ethnographic situations or ethnographic journals, you have more flexibility, right? You have more room for maneuver in terms of creativity, or the way you structure your descriptions are really up to you, so you can understand. And in the future, if you have to go back to your journals, then you're going to remember exactly how the scene was. And that's what I could actually notice from your second assignment, that was actually excellent, right? I could, and most of what you wrote, I could actually picture myself into that scene, which is important because you were just laying out all those factors that you saw into your writing, and I could say exactly even feeling, your um, your sensation, your situation, and it's really interesting. Okay, so I hope this helped too, as a second video for you guys. And again, um, this update literature review, it's going to be due this Friday. But if you have any doubts, please, you can, you know, come forward and ask me questions. I'm more than happy to give you feedback on that too. And just to clarify, if, for example, you got 70, out of 90, you in this update or revised version, you can, stretch it out up to 90, and that's going to be your final grade for this assignment. So if you got 70 and then you make the corrections, and making these corrections gets you 90, it gets you to 90, and 90 is going to be your final grade. Basically, it's 100%, right? Uh, okay, so this is for now. If you have any doubts, please feel free to contact me anytime. I'll try to be very quick, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.